It is that time of the week again where you grab your favorite beverage. For me, it is Boss Blend, and we'll unpack that in a separate episode. But settle in with your favorite beverage because we have a fun episode. I had the opportunity to catch up with David Perez, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of Residential at RMR, where he oversees operations and integrates processes and technology and data to achieve the company's objectives. Believing that people are the firm's greatest asset, he strives for excellence for partners, investors, and residents. Since joining RMR in 2017, David has brought a wealth of experience from his previous roles at EY and Houlihan Lokey, where he led financial advisory assignments across multiple industries. He also served as a senior strategic financial director at ABM, overseeing operations across 25 airports, and worked at Slalom Consulting, focusing on client financial analysis and the impact of technology on finance. David holds a BBA in finance and a leadership certificate from the University of Georgia. An Eagle Scout, he was appointed by the governor to serve on the board of commissioners for the Georgia Student Finance Commission. In his free time, he enjoys family activities like baseball and hiking. An avid learner, he studies Six Sigma and agile development concepts. A fan of the Atlanta Braves and UGA football, he's passionate about building high-functioning teams, believing there's more fun rowing in the same direction. We had a great conversation, mostly related to process and technology, and in that order, along with some very fun rapid fire questions. And David's answers to the rapid fire questions were amazing. So you will want to stick around to the end to catch that. So again, settle in with your favorite beverage and enjoy this conversation with David Perez. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, catch us up. Where you're in Atlanta, is that right?
I'm in Atlanta. Been here 4 years, so I've seen a lot here.
So where'd you move in from? I just assumed you'd been in Atlanta all your entire life.
I mean, it pretty much was. I look older just because I've been in the multifamily industry for the last 7.5 years. But
that checks out.
I was born in Miami, but then when I was around a year old, my parents moved up here, and I've been hanging out and in and around the Atlanta suburbs for the better part of 4 years. So.
Gotcha. Right on. My wife and I moved here about 7 years ago, plus minus. So, and we live north of the city proper, but really like Atlanta. It's a very diverse city, and we've lived San Francisco, Seattle, and other places, but I love the culture of Atlanta. Very cool city.
Agreed. My wife was born here. We had thoughts of going to New York, and the GFC happened. We had thoughts of maybe going to London, and that didn't work out. And then we had twins, and we're like, we're definitely not leaving. All our family's here, so we're here for the long haul.
That's awesome. Yeah, kids change. They change everything. So, well, hey, I'm excited. I know we had some fits and starts getting this booked on the calendar, but I appreciate your time, and I want to be respectful of it. So maybe we can just dive right in. I want to maybe start out high level leadership. You're obviously in a very high level leadership position at RMR. Can you kind of walk us through sort of the evolution of your career and bring it forward to today, just high level, how you got to where you are?
Yeah, so I was a finance major in school, good old Bulldog. And
sorry about the game last week.
Well, I celebrated my 2 victories in a row after wandering in the darkness for many years. So I'm happy to be where we are, and like we're considered a top team, and we're good. So I was a finance major. I was always numbers, finance, dollars. So I came out and was a transaction finance guy for 10 years. And then, family evolution happened. And I was like, I don't know if I can be in this high career at the time. Had 3 kids under 2. So that was a lot. So I kind of took a more like FP&A type finance role, evolved into a right hand to the EVP of an airport facilities team, literally like pushing wheelchairs, cleaning planes, like all our contracts were there. So I ended up spending a lot of time in the Midwest and Dallas, basically taking orders from Americans saying, why don't you have more people? So I learned operations from the very ground. And I was like, this is why when I asked for forecasts, operators can't actually give me forecasts as a transaction finance person because they're on the ground trying to find and badge people. I mean, we were hiring people at minimum wage that needed to make it through TSA screening, right? Like they had to pass stringent background checks. So, 50% turnover that we experience in some of our roles today is not anywhere near what I was experiencing then. Quickly learned that I could do the hybrid thing, and 3 kids wasn't a big deal, and that the company I worked for was a little bit too old school. There wasn't enough growth kind of there. So jumped to a technology and operations consulting business in between. And then a friend of mine was at the legacy platform and kind of said, look, you've had this hybrid experience. We buy a lot of deals. We need somebody to make sure the train shows up. We've been on this transactions spree, and we need somebody to kind of come in and translate, right? And I viewed myself as a translator. Hey, how can I take what the underwriting says and then put the right infrastructure in place so that we can execute and really kind of building this execution engine. So when I joined the platform, we were 20,000 units and that was 2017, like early 2017. And by the end of 2018, we were at 34,000.
That's breakneck.
So that took a lot of scaling. That took a lot of just putting puzzle pieces together and thinking about just how do you scale a shared service infrastructure to really build, something that could support what is a highly decentralized industry in terms of how you really manage it. I mean, it's almost like a franchise model, except you control all the stores and provide enough infrastructure for them to be able to do their jobs in a consistent manner. So that was my focus for, most of my time, and continues to be my focus today. I from there with COVID and everything else, saw me kind of leading from the front. There were less transactions to have during 2020, right? 2021, 2022 was high breakneck transaction. We sold a lot. We went from right around 34,000 units, and we've just continued to kind of trickle down from there. But that was just more markets and a bit of the transaction process. But, markets continue to be kind of stingy on where interest rates are and where sellers really want to actually sell. So, there's some green shoots definitely coming. I think there's some good stuff happening, but that's been my evolution and kind of what I've been focused on.
Got it. I want to back up and unpack something because I'm just deeply interested in this, having spent time in the corporate world and building organizations or putting infrastructures in place to support growth. How do you, from a principal perspective, think about scaling up an organization? What are you kind of high level thinking about when you're doing that?
It's really kind of a bottoms up approach. And I'll say that I didn't stumble upon it until further along on exactly what I was doing. But are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
I am.
And, there's something that's always resonated with me around just putting the customer at the center and thinking about how, some of the top brands really look at the customer being the driver of their business. So it's been this evolution, and I posted recently about like this ease model that we created. This was like 2019, 2018 timeframe. But it was all oriented around where is the customer and then what do we need to be doing? And it all emanates around what are we doing to serve that customer? Because ultimately they're the ones paying us. Right. So therefore they dictate the tasks that we should be doing. So then, I've always kind of thought about this pyramid of tasks, then skills that we need to have in order to execute those tasks, then the people that have those skills to execute those tasks, and then how do we reward those people that have those skills to do those tasks, and then you kind of build so that's the triangle, and then you build the pyramid of infrastructure of coaching, development, onboarding, talent, recruitment, all those kinds of things.
Got it. And as you were going through this, I mean, you're going from 20,000 units to 34,000 units, and we'd all like to believe we're putting the infrastructure in place before everything pours in to tax that infrastructure. But that's a perfect world. How, when you're going at that kind of breakneck pace, do you sort of squeeze that in at the right time so that everything doesn't fall apart?
Well, candidly, I got a little lucky on the timing. I joined like 6 months before we got awarded a 28 property portfolio. So I had spent 3-4 months saying, hey, these are some things that we need in place, and sort of a restructuring of sorts in order to really think about being, having everything kind of show up and get a lay of the land. And luckily along that way, there were a few transactions leading there that one went not so great, taught me a lesson about just how to be prepared and think about being prepared. A couple went okay. So I had gotten a couple of transactions under my belt. There was an assessment of needs, very tactical things like, hey, HR feels very outsourced today. We're driven by a people culture. We need to infuse culture around this. We need a better HR department. We actually transformed at the time, called it a people department, because it's people driven. HR had this, kind of connotation, I think, with it. It was, looking around at assessing just the tasks that people were asked to do and the volume of where the customer had gone. So gone were the days of your mailers that were, hey, here are all the apartments that are available to list, right? Everybody could find things online. People were shopping differently. So I had this digital thought process of going, I don't know why we're just using ILSs. This is just a brochure online that people scroll through. Like, there's a whole ecosystem around digital advertising. Why aren't we doing that? Mm-hmm. So that was like one of my main things. I was like, we need to hire a person for marketing. He's still here, Noah Eccles, and he's been just very thought forward on just bringing digital advertising. It's one of our unique things that we've evolved over time to really target that customer at the top of the funnel and really bring them in a very cost efficient manner. Like, customer acquisition costs today using any ILS is significantly more expensive than if you can just do it effectively in house. And then like pricing and how and what pricing systems and all of that. So there were like 3 or 4 things that I was like, hey, let's get these things in motion. And then, oh, by the way, boom, this whole thing comes. Hey, I've already got these things in motion. Now it's just a true project management plan of how we tactically go into this. And that's where some of my consulting work kind of came in. Was, look, this is just a project management plan of what things need to get done, how do they need to get done, and who's assigned to doing it. So built a good old RACI and just assigned people to it and tacked it along. So there was a little bit of preparedness and missteps that taught me about that, and I've continued to sort of keep my eyes open around that. But it's tough. It's tough to make a big change without something forcing you to make that change, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes the force factor is you get, even though multifamily moves at a pretty good clip now, you do get comfortable sometimes. And to quote Zig Ziglar, very old author, you don't want to get cooked in the squat. You want to keep moving. It's a baking term, but I have to imagine it, as you were, even though you're using RACI, you're putting accountability structure in place, there were still sort of hurdles and obstacles. And I'm just curious, when you're optimizing all those processes and those systems and disciplines in your organization, can you speak to how you, sitting back, architecting this whole thing, when you see challenges, when you see flags, when you see people pulling the andon cord, how do you handle that as a leader, knowing that you're spinning tons of plates, but if you don't fix this thing, the wheels are going to come off? How do you handle that from a leadership perspective?
It's still tough today. It's a prioritization just framework that I think you have to continuously evaluate over time, and just understanding what are the things that are critically important at a single point in time. One thing that I was outside the industry, right? I was learning on the
Mm-hmm.
fly. Real estate isn't all that complicated. It's just about cash flows. I did a lot of cash flow modeling over time.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was just translating that cash flow story to the things that mattered and the things that didn't tactically.
Mm-hmm.
So it just became surrounding myself with people that I could go to and trust. We really ran a very sort of flat, trusting kind of organization. I really did not want me to be the decision maker on
Mm-hmm.
a lot of day to day things. I believed in sort of autonomy and having enough rope for people to be able to think about and act on those things, and then them having the freedom to truly come to me with like, hey David, that's not a good idea. Like, hey, think about
Mm.
these things. Think about the impacts for this. Think about the changes and what we're doing. And something that we've always tried to do is start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
we're going to end up. Where are we today? And then once you have that, now you just have to find the path, right? And that path has evolved over time of what you're calling it today, and something we're moving towards, and I think it's really resonated with us. It's been like making moments. So there's just
Oh,
moments that you create along the way with your customers, with your clients, with your team, and focusing intently on those moments with good effort has really been something that it's enough of guardrail for people without
yeah.
telling them exactly, where to go and what to do around that. It's a tough balancing act.
So the word culture is just screaming to me right now in everything that you just said. And I'm interested, even if we go back and talk about Noah Eccles for a moment and how you identified this particular individual to come in and be a part of a culture. You obviously saw something in him, or your team saw something in him, and he's still there today, which I think is a testament to the fact that the culture is there. Um, how do you think about that word culture, and then how do you sort of practically make application of that from a leader's perspective? I heard something else you said there is, hey, look, I took my ego out of the room. And when people want to come and punch me in the nose, that's okay. They can do that. And I'm going to listen. So talk to me about how you set up an environment like that where people feel comfortable in that respect.
I think it just comes with being candid
Yeah.
and having the ability to be vulnerable in front of people and say, like, look, I'm human too. I had a
Yeah.
thought, we did this thing and it didn't work, and just being like, we're all going to make mistakes. Let's take the opportunity to learn from it, and let's not be um, scared
Mm-hmm.
of failing, kind of thing. And having that vulnerability has worked well, and I think we've just been able to learn a lot from the past cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Zooming out a little bit of the highs and the lows here of what to do and what not to do. We're a fairly diverse and young-ish company from a leadership perspective, and have um, just trusted one another in a way that, like, we can just come in, hash some things out, trust that the other person is coming to us in a way that is like they are trying their best.
Mm-hmm.
We're not second guessing that they're not giving their best, right? Because you can't control um, what actually happens. You can make your best effort at it, and as
Yeah.
long as you're proud of your effort, then I think that's all you can do. Uh, that's I've been a lot more around just demonstrating that I'm open in that. It's a lot more how you show up and how you actually do things than it is just telling people how to do things.
Yeah. I love that. It's, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something along the lines that people people remember how you make them feel, not necessarily how you or what you say, and how you show up in the world can either be a beneficial presence to others, or it can be just a downright nightmare and headache for people. And they tend to operate better in the former rather than the latter. So, I want to take a hard left and talk about maybe from a very high level or broadly speaking, the real estate market today. You kind of hit on it just a second ago with it being a tough environment. So there is a little bit of a pause in the marketplace right now. What are you doing in your organization to sort of set the stage for what some are saying is going to be this sort of next wave of growth? It'll take off at some point, and when it does, what are you doing with the time in between?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what the transaction with the legacy platform into RMR was about setting that next level of growth stage. We knew that capital and was going to be paramount for us in our ability to get out there. RMR is publicly traded, long 30, 40, almost 40 years old, well-known institution in all other real estate asset classes other than residential. So they felt like we fit well in that. So it was a nice marriage there. And from the get-go, they've been all about investing in residential, and felt like residential was a great asset class to be in. So what they've really been able to do, and what we've been able to do, is really hire some additional talent, particularly on the acquisitions team. We've reorged a little bit of how operations works, and frankly, we've advanced the organization from a shared service scaling perspective. Just from an infrastructure standpoint, we've gone from a 10-person IT team, a 10-person HR team, to a 60-person or 50 change person IT team, right? A 25-person HR team, a 100-person accounting team, where before it was like a 25-person accounting team. We're now part of something at 40 billion plus scale that like a much bigger manager. But residential was allowed to kind of be this pocket, and saying, look, now you get the benefit of all this scale, and we're going to pour into you guys just like we pour into all the other stuff, this infrastructure that's now backing you. So that's been a nice kind of like lift for us in a way. So it's really prepared us to go to market in a way that says, look, to all our partners, to everybody that came along the ride, we had to get 100% consents to do the transaction, which meant all our partners, all our lenders said, yes, we believe in you guys, let's go. So now it's like, okay, let's get the flywheel turning again. Oh, markets still are wobbly. What's the Fed going to do? What's inflation going to do? What are sellers going to do? Everybody was predicting massive waves of defaults and all of that. A lot of the assets that didn't really go that way, that people were able to kind of work them out in some fashion. There've been a few here and there. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of about, understanding where the puck is going a little bit, and having some gut feel about where cycles have been in the past and what you're seeing fundamentally, and how it looks or maybe feels a little different than what you've been looking at for the last 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. It who knows, a little bit of it is crystal ball thinking, but it does seem like that when I think we're in the beginning stages of the next cycle. Who knows? That's not my novel thought. I'm just listening to a bunch of people out in the world. But it does seem like that when it takes off again, there is a lot of dry powder sitting on the sidelines, a lot of people working on the infrastructures of their businesses, however they choose to put that together. And it's going to be, in my head, it's going to be one of the most interesting and exciting times to be in real estate these next 48 to 60 months, plus minus, I think. Go ahead.
No. I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree. I think, and I talked a lot about the investment side and shared services. There's an operating component to all of that. Just how do you tactically deal with what's systematically going in certain places, supply, demand, what are all the implications of that, costs going up over time? How do you make things just execute and work and keep people energized until it until it starts feeling good again, right?
Yeah, that's right. To play off of that, it's a kind of a nice segue. Great job teeing it up. I want to know how you think about technology as it relates to everything that you just cited as on the operations side, whether it be how do we optimize for expenses that are going up? How do we sort of think about revenue differently because we're not in that kind of hyper growth mode that we were in, 36 months ago or 24 months ago. But how do you think about technology as it relates to your operations?
Um, I've always had a mantra. It's like people, process, then technology. It is,
Mm,
if you need to design how you want things to work around that customer. And then if there are things or tasks that you can leverage technology to make it bigger, better, faster, stronger, then that's where technology really plays. It shouldn't be that technology is driving your change. It should be
mm,
that you wanting to do more should then consider how technology could make you do more faster, like execute better. If you think about like, hey, how do I like everybody's AI, right? So
yeah.
we started AI way back in 2020, kind of forced our hand, and in 2019 we kind of started experimenting with an offshore team doing a call center top end lead thing, and a lot of that evolution was sitting there going, think about what you ask a leasing consultant to do today.
Mm,
In a classic sense, they are supposed to be working leads in the funnel, closing leads when they come in front of you as a tour, and then doing
mm,
customer service on the back end. Think about any other sales industry. That's three different teams, and we're
that's right.
asking one person to do it. And that's how I've always just thought about like, hey, why aren't people successful? Like, working the top of the funnel. Like, I I know I am not a good BDR. I am not a
Mhm.
great guy that likes to walk the room and just tell stories and meet people. I'm a good, identifying a problem, putting a solution in front of somebody, and then closing that deal. I'm in the middle. I don't like out here generating the thing. I don't necessarily love customer service, but it's a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
But I sit there and I'm like, well, these are my skills, and this is what I'm really good at. We're asking these people to be all throughout the funnel. So by taking that process and then trying to break it down and say, all right, what can we do to make this better? We created this team, this offshore team. That offshore team quickly got inundated when we shut all the offices down with phone calls, right?
Yeah.
And trying to respond to messages because like nobody could even come in the office. So we said, all right, we got to add technology component to this to just get to these things. So we started experimenting with call AI type bots. Made an investment in that, created an IVR phone structure that it would at least decrease that volume that was coming into the office, with the whole goal of just schedule the tour. Let's just get it on the calendar, schedule it. Now your leasing consultant has chopped off the very front end. They can focus on who comes in, and they can then do customer service. So that's how we've really just kind of said, all right, our process is saying this is too much. We can't do enough volume that's expected of us because how the consumer has changed, how they're shopping. They're all online. We got to work these leads online. We got to get them to come in. People don't have time when they're on a tour to work these leads that come in. They only work 9 to 5. Like, what happens before 9? What happens after 5? Like, how do you do touch as much as possible? That's where
Right.
technology enabled us to really take a leap and being able to get to a lot more customers, meet a lot more touch points in that way. So that kind of is an illustration, I guess, of how we would think about breaking down a process and saying, where can we really leverage technology to improve our efficiency?
I love that sort of people process and then technology because I think innate in your point is if you have bad person, bad process, and you just throw technology in there, you're just going to get a worse result.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And many times we do that.
Yeah.
We see the next bright and shiny thing, and we run off after that. And we have bad process to begin with.
Yeah, I mean,
And it
when I
just,
came in, it was like we had a CRM, but nobody knew what CRM even meant. So, people were just like, well, I emailed them. And I'm like, no, you have a CRM system. Like, that's your customer relationship management tool. Like, that's where that way you have a log of everything you've ever discussed with them, and how you make that connection. And that's just an example of that. It's like, we didn't have a process about how people should engage with a customer. We just threw a tool in there and said, oh, they should know.
yeah, yeah, you know how to turn on a computer. Surely you know how to work that CRM. It is like that. Okay. I want to switch gears again and talk about a topic that I think is near and dear to your heart, and that is working out in the community away from RMR. And if you could talk about some of the things you've done in the community and how maybe that ties back to your leadership in the company, if there are sort of correlations that you can draw from those experiences outside.
Yeah. Look, being a good steward of where you live is just part of, probably investing in real estate, right? Like, so it was it was actually a lead in, and I probably should have mentioned that at the top, is like, I led a light homeowners association here in Sandy Springs that was like sort of an unaffiliated 4,000 houses that kind of comprised like District 6 of Sandy Springs. And at the time, there was just so much development going on, and that board really being involved in that and being the president of that board, the High Point Civic Association, and just like seeing the kinds of development projects, and then listening to like constituents and being like, hey, we don't want this new apartment over there. It's going to decrease our values. And I look at it, and it's like 400 unit Class D, and there's, it's built in the 60s, and there's crime and a lot of things kind of going on. And I'm going, how do I do for better and get people to see that it will be better, right? And really tell that story of like, and I'm a volunteer, right? I just happen to live at a house in the middle of this thing. But it was that kind of like storytelling element in which you kind of go through and say, look, guys, I hear what you're saying. You are heard. Absolutely. And you have some valid points here. Traffic, I hear you, right? But think about the future of what this community might look like. And that, is like how you might have to talk about things with your company, right? It's, hey, team, think about, I hear you. Like, these are all concerns, right? We've all gathered here. You guys have all voiced your opinions. Think about the future now. Think about if we make this happen and work, what it will do for us, like how we will feel if we execute on this. And then look, if it doesn't work out, we'll learn from it. It is not the end of the world. It's not going to kill us. It's not. We'll do something a little different next time. And that story piece of just like having to engage in a thoughtful way with individuals, and frankly, I was talking to our head of property management yesterday on the phone, and we were just like, she's like, look, David, I always go on site to just make sure that I never lose touch of what our people are doing. And I go, absolutely, Tracy. I always take resident phone calls.
Yeah.
When they get escalated to me, I don't just pass them off. Like, I take them because I need to understand what our people are hearing, why people are so frustrated, and sometimes I can do something about it. Sometimes I need some help to do something about it, but it keeps me in touch with that, ultimate constituent, that ultimate person, that I'm ultimately serving.
I very much, that resonates with me. It's, I won't be able to make attribution to this, but I heard this, it's called management by walking around or wandering around or something of that nature. It goes like that. But it seems to me the people that I've worked with in the past in property management and multifamily specifically, the ones that were really, really good were the people who didn't sit in that corporate chair very often. They were out sitting in the seat of the leasing consultant. Okay, I've got the mouse. Tell me what the next piece of this workflow is, right? They're actually putting their hands on things and they're listening to people. Because when I come back and I'm pitching something to the senior leadership team, you know what, I can do it from first person. I don't have to do, and I can really express their pain in a way that I can potentially get a fix put in place for them. It's the only way to do it. You can't mail it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just not possible. Okay, so the world is shifting very swiftly. I think all businesses are experiencing, you used the term AI just a second ago, but business is just shifting and it's changing rapidly. And I'm just wondering how you balance strategy, setting strategy in place for the organization with things that are coming at you at a breakneck pace these days, whether it be technology and or disruption to even the simple hierarchy, I think is at play right now, right? You mentioned flat organization just a second ago. Many organizations are big hierarchies and they're going to move to flat, but so how do you balance strategy with everything that's flying at you on a consistent basis?
Yeah. I talked a lot about this earlier, just around at the end of the day, it's like, is this better for the customer? Is this truly better for them? And if it is, does it then replace or change how we should think about things? Or has our customer shifted where they are? So then we need to think about where we're showing up too. It's how do you think about what people want ultimately? And a lot of that is just being grounded in where it's going. At some point there is analysis paralysis where you're just like never going to make a decision. So there's hey, are we 80% good here kind of thing? And let's just focus on this and get to a place of like, are we solving the key question? And that's always what I try to aim to. Is if we pick a path and we're solving the key question that we thought. Now, if the question changes over time, then you're going to have to shift that strategy clearly. But that key question should be, and this goes back to my consulting days, but cumulatively exhausting, and mutually exclusive. So you've now taken all of the things together that possibly exist in the universe of answering that question, and you're able to kind of create a way to answer it kind of bottoms up kind of approach. And I know I'm saying just a lot of consulting random things here, just like tactically going, all right, are people truly shopping for apartments sight unseen online, and how do they want to do it? Do I want to put in a virtual tour component? What does that look like? What are we trying to do here? Is it successful? All right, let's chart a path. All right, we're kind of down this path a little bit. Doesn't seem like adoption's as strong as we thought. Let's just hit pause on this because, look, we don't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze right now. We've got other things we want and need to go drive around customer experience to go do that. Like our customers just do not value it as much as we thought. And that's just sort of like a tactical, hey, we thought this coming out of COVID, people just shop differently. And we've just seen it kind of come back a little bit. I would say it's somewhere in the more edge case kind of thing still. It's a nice to have if you're in a nice, stabilized, less supply kind of thing and you're rounding around the edges. But for the most part, consumers haven't gravitated completely to, look, I need a holistic solution. And while I'm a consumer like that, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to buy. I can do all my analysis and all this stuff myself. A lot of consumers just aren't that way yet.
I believe that to be true. And I share that same sentiment. Something came to mind as you were going through that. Hopefully I can articulate this well because I'm doing it very off the cuff, but I read a stat this morning that 70%, our population is made up of 70% Gen X or Gen Y rather. And so you have this big cohort that's come into kind of the living space or renting apartments, buying homes, etc. But you also have that same cohort because they're in mass, right? Serving those same individuals. If you were to compare and contrast like today's sort of consumer and worker versus when you were advising, say 10 years ago, what's really shifted? What has been the big evolution over that course of time because you have this new big cohort in the population?
Well, I just think it's the way that consumers are more informed before they get to
Yeah.
your door. So
Okay.
you
Okay.
just need to know that they already know a lot more than you traditionally thought they knew, right? So you're
Yeah.
starting at a place further along. So there's a bit of a preamble you need to give to just check a couple of boxes, make sure they understand what they are, what's going on, and then you're really getting into a more advanced discussion early on. Like if somebody's
Yeah.
already at your doorstep, they've already shopped somewhere else or at least shopped online in a way. So they're just way more informed than they have ever been. The nice part of the younger cohort is that they're probably already expecting that, right? They're
Yeah.
already in those people's shoes. So I think it's just that balancing act of just making sure that people understand. Look, people know more, they can be more informed, and now with all the different AI engines available out there, I mean, you can ask it, hey, give me the top 5 places to go live in this, street, and it'll give you a list and immediately give you the details of it, and you just show up and go, I saw you had this for 1,300. Let's go take a look at it. So there's just a lot more knowledge at people's fingertips, and people need to be cognizant and be ready for it and be prepared enough for it. You can't kind of fumble your way through that. You have to really be prepared.
Yeah, not anymore. People's meters, BS meters, so to speak. Yeah, they're redlining. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time, so I had one more question, but I'm going to skip that. I'm going to switch to some rapid fire questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right. What a book or a podcast or something that you read or listened to recently that has really made an impact on you? And could you share the book and or the podcast or whatever resource that might be?
Yeah. Well, I'll share a couple of books that continue to resonate. Yeah, it's one is probably, well, it's years old, but read it within the last couple of years again. It was Radical Candor.
Yeah.
And within that, there's a lot of stuff in there, but like one of the things that really stuck out to me is the concept around superstars versus rock stars and how an
Mhm.
organization needs that. And as my life has evolved with, I have 4 kids and just the ups and downs of what life is and what you're ready for. Like some of my life changes dictated why I left banking and went to, a slower down kind of thing. It didn't mean that I was, any dumber or didn't have aspirations. It just meant that at a point in time, I did
Yeah.
not have, you know, that super aspirational time period, and I needed to just be a rock star, show up, do my work, and be available in other places in my life.
Hmm.
And as just a leader of an organization, I just have always kept that in mind. Um, and the concept of the 9 box, where you put high
I do.
performers like the hypos up
Mhm.
in the top right?
Yep.
And we had done some of those things, and I said, well, why aren't we prioritizing the 2 quadrants below on the right side? Like those are
Mm.
critically important people. They show up, they do their job, they just don't want to go to the next level. Like they knock it out of the park every day. And I always go back to, and if my mom ever listens to this, I'll tell her she was my inspiration. But my mom worked at 43 years from originally what was AT&T through its breakup all the way to it was back to AT&T in
Oh
like
my.
compliance for them. And she did contract compliance and did all these things. She said, never give me a promotion, never have anybody report to me. I just want to come in and do my job. For 43 years, she just showed up, did her job, was a rock star at it, and then kind of forced retired her finally when she was in her early 70s. But, they were like, I don't know, you can go find another job, Yolanda. And I was like, she's like, well, I'm going to go find another job at 73? Yeah, okay. Um, anyway, that was just, being able to succinctly hear that out of Radical Candor, just like superstars, like, hey, you want to make sure you nurture your superstars and tell them, look, when we grow, you'll grow too. right?
Mm,
But you need to make
yeah.
sure you're taking care of your rock stars because they're going to be there for you just from an execution
Yeah.
standpoint. And look, another one recently that I've been reading is Mind Hacking Happiness, which I forget the author at this point, but it was, he touches in a lot of philosophical ways, and it's a much more personal book around just how and why you think and where you are and why you react the way that you do and what's attached to you. And it's a much more like introspective. Why
Mm,
do you, do the things that you do, and what is attached to your ego, and how you show up and what you do impacted, because your body's just trying to defend itself. It's just trying to
mm,
whatever, and you've attached something to you that makes it feel a certain way. So it's really a philosophical thing where if you can get in there and understand why something makes you, you know, vehemently disagree, then you
right.
can really start to unpack what, like, okay, well, is that a rational thing that truly could, harm me or create an issue, and try and reframe it and try and do some of that. And there's a whole lot of other things in that book to really uh, unpack, but that was something that resonated out of that.
I got it. I love to read. We'll find the author and we'll link it up in the show notes. Okay. I'll do one more here, and then I know we'll kind of give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find out more about you or get to you directly. Morning routines. Do you think they're essential for productivity, or they're highly overrated?
That's a complex question. Um, I struggle with morning routines, candidly. Like, I get up and I just have to start moving. I am a slow uh, waker. I just kind of have
Yeah.
tactical things I have to do with the kids, get them off to school, move on with things, work out, and then kind of get started with my day as my brain has started to process what's happening. I am much more of a evening routine kind of person.
Ah,
It is a lot of like, probably how I've counteracted is I just set up my next day in a way where I just go, okay, what are the things I need to go do to wind down? What are the things I need to think about for tomorrow? Because I know that it's going to take me a minute to get going. My morning could be chaotic. Like, one of my girls could just be like, nope, I'm ignoring the alarm. I'm not, I got to go get her out of bed and, get her to breakfast, get her in the car. There might be homework wrapping. Like, there's too much chaos for me to be like, all right, you know, at night, at least I know everybody's asleep and I can just have the time, hey, Brooke, what are we doing? How are we, what's the routine for tomorrow? Where do I need to be? How do I need to be? And then I look at my own calendar and go through that. So there is a routine that you must have. I think you just have to figure out when it's supposed to happen.
yeah. Wow. I'm only laughing because my kids are now out of the house, but all of that just came sweeping back into my mind. So I totally get it. All right. Well, I want to say I really appreciate you investing some time with me today, but I want to give you an opportunity to tell our and or your organization.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. You go to rmrgroup.com. Publicly traded RMR stock symbol on the Nasdaq. Big organization. Within that, we're RMR Residential. You can find us at a more rmrresidential.com page there as well. And that's got a lot of our legacy stuff and everything we've done there. We've been, focused primarily on investments, but we're growing as a manager as well, and really trying to bring what we feel like is a good secret sauce to management and executing business plans at the residential level.
Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so taking a little bit of time out was certainly we absolutely appreciate it. So
Yeah, Mike, I sincerely appreciate you having me on. It's great, and I'm excited for you and this next turn of what you're creating here.
well, thank you. I appreciate. I'll receive that. All right, Dave. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks again.